Most people think of moons in video games as background decorations. It's a skybox and it's a good mood setter. But in Final Fantasy, it's actually a really cool storytelling tool because the moon actually evolves across the series and it evolves in its purpose. And sometimes that means gameplay or visually or just lore wise. And once you trace that evolution across the games, you start to notice a pattern. The moon in Final Fantasy is never just a moon. And let's start where the moon really becomes its own character, because before Final Fantasy IV, it really was just there. But in Final Fantasy IV, we see the first time where the moon stops being scenery and starts becoming lore. Here, the world has two moons, the traditional pale moon and the ominous red moon. And unlike most Final Fantasy settings, one of these moons isn't a metaphor, it's a habitat. The red moon is literally home to the Lunarians, this peaceful, technologically advanced race who left their dying world and went into cryosleep, waiting for humanity to mature. I don't think that's ever gonna happen, personally, but they're probably still sleeping, if I'm being honest. And 4 reframes the moon from just a mystical object or just somewhere in the video game to a cosmic origin point. And this moon holds a civilization, it holds a future, a past, and a threat. Even visually, the moon is an emotional landmark of the story, the final dungeon, kind of just watching everything unfold. So, all right, now let's go to Final Fantasy IV, the After Years. And in the After Years, the moon stops being a kind of static location and becomes something very active, and that is a direct influence on gameplay. The game introduces lunar phases which cause magic and attack power and enemy behavior even to change and shift depending on the moon's current state. So a waxing moon boosts white magic and a waning moon boosts black magic, that kind of thing. This is the first time that the moon literally affects the rules of the game world. The moon becomes a rhythm the planet must obey, even the player has to obey.
Bow to your sensei. Bow to your sensei!
A tool for storytelling and a reminder that, you know, all these celestial bodies in Final Fantasy are rarely passive. But the next time the moon shows up in Final Fantasy, it's not a home and it's definitely not a blessing. And we're talking about Final Fantasy VIII. We skipped a couple here because the moons in Final Fantasy VII, VI, not super crazy lore-wise. But in Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy VIII gives us what might be the coolest and kind of darkest interpretation of what the moon could be in the entire franchise. Here, the moon isn't this peaceful, lovely, beautiful thing that we're all looking at. It's not a symbol of hope or magic or mystery or anything like that. The moon simply is just full of monsters and basically death. And every few decades, these monsters overflow in an event called pretty cool or corny, depending on how you look at it, but the Lunar Cry, which always sounds super cool. It's where the moon literally just rains monsters onto the planet. It's raining cats and dogs, anyone? And Final Fantasy VIII reframes the moon as a biological threat and a cosmic horror kind of, and like a reoccurring apocalypse kind of baked into the world's life cycle. And it's a tonal shift, right? Because in 4, the moon is where kind of like there's this wisdom and mystery kind of, and in 8, it's where nightmares live basically. But Final Fantasy IX does something even stranger. It reveals a world shaped by 2 moons, one of which isn't even native. 9 brings back the dual moon concept, but here it's tied directly to the world building. Gaia has a blue moon, which is its natural satellite, its natural moon, and a red moon, which is left behind from Terra, which is an ancient dying planet trying to merge with Gaia. The red moon is literally the scar of a failed planetary fusion, and also the twin moons of Final Fantasy IX probably is like just imagery wise, probably the 2 most beautiful kind of moon sky boxes in the game. And it's not just there for the vibes, it's definitely a storytelling through kind of like this astronomy lens, I guess. But from here, the moon starts shifting from a literal plot device to something more symbolic, but it never fully fades away. And now we have Final Fantasy X. And spoiler alert, there basically is no moon in Final Fantasy X. There is, but I love Final Fantasy X, so I'm just gonna bullshit my Final Fantasy X entry. Like I said, Final Fantasy X doesn't really have a visible moon, but I wanted to include it because I love 10, and that's about it. I'm gonna say that the absence means something. Hey, your boy's out here working hard. Final Fantasy 11. I never played Final Fantasy 11, so I'm kind of just reading. Well, I get all of my information from like the Final Fantasy wiki, but I'm almost reading like a lot of verbatim stuff from the wiki because I never played it myself. But in Vana'diel, I guess apparently the moon isn't just a moon. The moon apparently impacts, gameplay, rarity of maybe items or monsters. And obviously there is some mythological connection to the land from the moon. And from what I could read, what makes the 11's moon stand out is first off, Vana'diel's lunar cycle lasts about 84 in-game days. And that's like new moon, full moon, and kind of back again. And as the moon orbits, the visible phases change from like waxing and waning, and you can kind of see that. And the moon's color is tinted by the weekday. This is all in-game. For example, Fire's Day gives the moon a red tint. Earth's Day is yellow, and that means that every moon kind of cycle feels a little bit different depending on the day. First off, that's really cool. That's a really cool detail. Not unprecedented in an MMO. At least I don't think it would be unprecedented in an MMO, but a very cool detail that seems very thought out. And like I said, it affects monster rarity. Certain spawns only happen under certain moon phases. I've read that people believe that the moon phase affects drop rates. I have no firsthand experience with this, so you guys let me know. Does it affect crafting success or gardening yields or kind of chocobo digging outcomes? Because I read all that different stuff on like Reddit and different forums. Who knows? Now, the moon kind of takes a back seat in 12, but it does come back in 13 in a pretty cool way, which are actually really cool because it's kind of like another dual moon system. Most Final Fantasy moons orbit a planet, but in 13, it's pretty unique because the planet itself, I don't know, it's kind of split into two ecosystems. You have Pulse, which is like the quote unquote true kind of surface world. And then you have Cocoon, which is an artificial moon or shell, I don't know, kind of suspended in the sky. It's floating there and it's held up by the foul sea. And this makes Cocoon functionally a moon in reverse because the moon is above the world. It's artificially created, artificially sustained. It's the only time in the series where the moon is not really a moon, at least as far as I can think of. It's hollow, and it's first off, there's like millions of people on it, super technologically advanced, and it's just kind of literally just hanging there. It's man-made. And 13's moon is unique because I like the duality of Pulse's natural state and Cocoon's artificial state, and it's kind of reflected a little bit in the themes. You got fate versus freedom and artificial versus natural. Those are all very surface level themes, but it's very cool to begin with. But visually, it's up there with Final Fantasy IX, and looking at it now, I think it might surpass it. Cocoon and Grand Pulse are really visually awesome looking places. And then we get to Final Fantasy XIV, which I have played, and I'm talking thousands upon thousands of hours. And the coolest thing about 14's moon, Dalamud, is. And it's really unique. It's really unique and it's really cool. So to paint a picture, obviously 14, we're all like Final Fantasy fans, but if you don't play real MMOs, you probably do know that the original 14 kind of sucked and bombed, and they tried to improve it. But basically the engine and the way they were coding the original 14 was like trying to put a band-aid on an RPG wound. And so they had to scrap the original game. And this is before Realm Reborn. This is Final Fantasy 1.0. And in the sky leading up to 1.0 server closings, there was a faint kind of glow, and it grew bigger and bigger and bigger as in the real world, days and days and weeks and maybe months went by. Like I said, I didn't play the original 14. I played the new Realm Reborn version. But as the moon grew in size, and it was this red kind of ball of fire, and when the servers officially closed, a trailer played, which was a trailer for A Realm Reborn, which was the relaunch of 14, which is what I played thousands of hours of. And this cool cinematic played, and I will have it in the background here, and it was just a cool looking thing. So for the most of 1.0, an early A Realm Reborn Dalmud appears as a strange red satellite orbiting the world, and it's ominous, and it is artificial, and clearly not just a moon. Because it isn't. Dalamud is a prison. It was constructed by the Allegan Empire to imprison Bahamut, turning the moon basically into a weaponized cage orbiting the world, set to be unleashed. And when Dalamud falls during the end of an era cinematic, it doesn't burn up or shatter, it cracks open like an egg, and baby Bahamut emerges, ready to see and experience the world with his baby eyes for the first time. And now we can talk about Menfina, which is the main moon of Final Fantasy XIV, and it's not really like Dalamud. It's not catastrophic or anything. It's actually pretty serene, and it's named after the lover, one of the 12 goddesses. And what makes this moon unique is because it's literally associated with a living deity, its presence has definitely shaped culture and holidays and relationships. And in Eorzea, Menfina's moon is a symbol of like affection and protection and renewal and all that kind of good, warm, fuzzy stuff. And it's very lovely, and it's, yeah, like the exact opposite of Dalamud, actually, you know, because I know I just literally just said that I couldn't think of another kind of like a dual moon where they feel so opposite to each other. But hey, I forgot about 14, and that's why I'm recording this. Dalamud is artificial and violent and catastrophic, and Menfina's moon is natural and serene and nurturing. And again, it's really cool. And for me, this is like 14 is really the height of like this moon iconography, whatever you want to call it, these themes where they're really tied to the moon, because as we get into 15, as I'm going to kind of tell you about, the moon starts to sort of take a back seat again, kind of like it did in the first, few Final Fantasy games. Speaking of 15, and 15 brings the moon back to this more mythic, just purely atmospheric role, part of the world's celestial identity, rather than any kind of direct plot mechanic. And it's very simple. It feels very romantic and dangerous and a little ancient, maybe not so much dangerous. But more importantly, it ties into the astrals and the recurring theme of light versus darkness, though it's not like as direct a plot point as earlier Final Fantasy titles. And it's basically where the moon kind of starts becoming an aesthetic symbol again. It kind of started off that way, and then it kind of turned into like this gameplay and super duper lore driven plot device. And now it's kind of settling back into kind of just a visual anchor during the game's most emotional scenes. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that takes us to the latest interpretation, the moon in Final Fantasy 16. And once again, kind of like 15, the moon is just a mood setter and a reminder that the sky is watching. Look, there's not much to go into here. It's just the moon, right? But you do see this kind of bell curve, right? The moon has gone from literal world building to cosmic disaster to planetary evidence to gameplay affecting gameplay. I'm sorry, my nose is like stuffy. To gameplay affecting thing to symbol of world building losing its balance. And yeah, there's kind of this bell curve of the moon in Final Fantasy, and it's kind of gone back to where it started as a kind of mood setter, just an aesthetic piece. And what I love about the Final Fantasy series is that even the moon, something you might not think much about or think twice about, has a story and a journey and evolution. In one game, it's a homeland, and in another, it's a warning sign, and in 11, it's a gameplay mechanic almost, and in another, it's a scar left behind by a dying planet. And sometimes its absence is the story, or so I tell myself when I write these things. And now I want to hear from you guys. Which Final Fantasy interpretation of the moon is your favorite? And should this become a series? Maybe the evolution of crystals, or summons, or airships, or gods, or gameplay mechanics. I don't care. Let me know in the comments. I'm sorry my voice has gotten really stuffy over the past couple minutes. Love you guys all. It's been a great year. Appreciate all the support. God bless. Don't forget to like and subscribe.